Hello, my name is Saga and this is our van that we've been spending the last year in living and traveling around the South Island of New Zealand. It's been super incredible and building it was definitely the hardest part of van life. So today I wanted to share how we built our van, what solutions we came up with, and how we made the van as budget-friendly and eco-friendly as possible. Step number one was finding the perfect van. It took us about 2 months all in all in finding the perfect van. We actually only looked at two. This was the second one. So after looking, we found this great Yetokado. It's a 2001 model. So it looked completely different when we first bought it. And I don't think we realized how much work it was. If we had done that, I wouldn't have done it. I don't think I would have dared to, but I'm very happy we did. We didn't really have a set budget apart from what was in our bank accounts. My husband was working at the time and I was working a lot less to be able to work on the van during the daytime. So once we knew we had the money and a van, we could start planning and renovating. We definitely had some ideas of what we wanted the van to look like. We wanted it to be made mainly from natural materials. We wanted it to be super affordable, and we also really wanted it to be minimalist because we don't have that much stuff and we don't want it to feel cramped since we wanted to be able to be cozy in here on rainy days. We did draw some different interior designs on paper, but since we didn't really know what we had in front of us, we didn't really plan anything. We sort of designed it as we went. So for this van in particular, the first step was to remove the interior, which proved to be so much more difficult than expected. Our van was covered floor to ceiling in blue and yellow carpet that was moldy, old, and disgusting, and taking that out was so much harder than we expected because everything was glued or drilled or super stuck. And since sending waste to landfill is kind of expensive, what we did was that we sold everything in here that could be sold. So for example, the metal shelves we sold for $1 to a guy that might do something with them, and same thing with every tiny little detail in here. Even the wood cutoffs we sold for another $1 to someone who needed them. So once everything was taken out, we started with the base floor. It was a very simple construction where I just glued long pine battens and treated to the floor. I filled the gaps with organic New Zealand wool insulation that we got for free since those were just offcuts that were going to waste anyway, and we covered that with a 10mm plywood board. So we went with 10mm and we've had 4 to 6 people in here I think at the same time, and there's been no problems whatsoever. The floor was a good place to start because it gave me confidence, and it was also probably the easiest part of the build because the next step was the main build, and that was a lot harder. This meant building the kitchen, the bed, and the cupboards, everything that needed some sort of structure. We were super lucky in the sense that this van is a bit different. It came with a welded-in metal frame, so behind every part of our van, everything is screwed into a metal framing, so we didn't need to set up wooden framing or worry about how to go about that at all. To save on material cost and weight, we used pine framing for all our furniture, and then we covered it in very thin plywood. This means that all furniture in here is super lightweight and very easy to move. We didn't finish anything with paint since we wanted to avoid VOCs and toxins in such a small space where we were basically, are being cooked in the summer months. So instead we just went with natural New Zealand grown hemp oil on every single exposed wood item. And one of our main focuses here to make it as easy for us as possible was to really take the simple way out. So for the kitchen, my first idea was to have regular kitchen drawers with wooden facing on top, but realizing how much heavier and especially more expensive and more labor intensive that would be, I instead opted for organic cotton fabric and sewed curtains for the kitchen drawers to protect them and to keep it pretty. So much easier and so much cheaper, but also a lot lighter, which is great since our van is a non-turbo, quite old van and we keep all of our belongings in here. It was quite frustrating building the main build because everything took twice as long as expected because we had to do it first and then fail and then do it again correctly. We didn't have any building experience and we also didn't own any tools, but we were really lucky that both me and my husband worked at a mattress factory where they made organic mattresses and bed frames. So we had access to all their tools, which was super gracious and kind of the owner. The next step of our build was to put in our ceiling light. I think this was the most expensive, after the battery, the most expensive item we bought for the van, but it was really worth it. It was super difficult to install, Once the skylight was set in, it was waterproof and everything was nice and covered, so the next step became the walls. Now the reason you do the walls first is because you have planned your electricity, so you're already put through all the electricity, all the cables and wires, so you don't have to worry about it. However, the main reason I think we did everything the wrong way around was because I was so terrified of doing the electricity, so I procrastinated it basically for 4 months. But we'll get back to the electricity later because the next step was plumbing. The plumbing was so much harder than expected, probably one of the biggest hurdles to finish the van because I got a secondhand sink and there was basically no plumbing attachment that could get the sink into our water jugs. It just didn't exist. Finally I got help. I went to 3 plumbing stores. At the 2 first ones, they said it couldn't be done. At the 3rd one, I was really lucky and they found the perfect solution. So yes, it did work. It just needed a lot of persistence. And since we're in New Zealand, there are a few rules you need to follow when it comes to plumbing. In New Zealand, to be able to freedom camp, you need to be certified self-contained, and quite often to get into most campsites as well. That meant we needed 2 water jugs, one for fresh water and one for grey water, and that also we needed a vent for the grey water. And again, to avoid electricity but also cost, I opted for a foot pump instead of an electric water pump. And this is actually one of my favorite simple solutions, and I'm so glad I went with it. Once all of that was done, it was time to do the dreaded electricity. In the beginning, I found it so confusing, and I had countless breakdowns over how to do it. I was super confused of what to do, so I called my dad expecting to get help because, you know, he did the electricity for our entire farmhouse. So I asked him, how do you start? What do I do? How does it work? How do I do electricity? And he said, you just do it. So that's his reply to most things, which obviously wasn't really helpful. But after having done it, I would probably say the same thing. It was by far the easiest part of the van build. It was not only easy, it was fun, and it was like being back at school. I just wish I hadn't been so scared in the beginning to do it wrong that I pushed it off for so long. I also think there's too much information on the internet and that most of it is bad. I mean, most of us aren't gonna build a crazy electrical setup for our van. So my biggest recommendation after doing the van is don't pay for any courses. Don't watch any of those YouTubers. There is only one YouTuber I would recommend, and he is incredible. His name is Greg Virgo. He just has slow and proper videos of the most logical and simple solutions. No crazy sponsored products, no 1 hour long electricity builds. It took me 10 minutes after watching his video of basically putting all together. So easy. So what do we have for electricity? We're in New Zealand, so we're pretty spoiled when it comes to sunshine. We have one 340 watt solar panel and we have a 120 amp hour lithium battery. This means we have an abundance of stored electricity. We never run out, not even if it rains for days. Off our system, we run a 36-liter fridge that can be either put on as a fridge or a freezer. It also runs ceiling lights. Our skylight has some night reading lights. We have 2 USB charging ports for our phones, and we have a 300 watt inverter in where my husband charges his shaver. We charge our camera and our computers. So once the electricity was finished, we could finally start with the ceiling. I wanted the slatted look, but I didn't want to pay for heavy wood, so we got plywood. I got 6mm plywood that we cut very thinly, about 7 centimeters if I remember correctly, and we put it up on the roof. Once everything in the van was finished, it was time to do all the fabric details, which of course was my favorite part. So our kitchen curtains are made from organic cotton. Everything else is made from 100% linen, apart from our pillow covers, which are made from a blend of linen and cotton. That means all the fabric is completely plastic free and natural. It's super easy to clean and care for, and it's very sturdy. These cushions back here are just cushion covers that I made with a simple zipper that just goes like this, and in here we keep our bedding. But I really suggest that you learn how to use a sewing machine if you're building something like this or renovating a home. But I definitely spent a lot of cold, dark nights slightly crying, slightly finishing our sewing projects. But the sewing was by far the easiest for me since that's what I had the most experience with. The last sort of main step was finishing the cork flooring, and we did that after all the furniture was in so we could save on price by not putting cork floor everywhere. We decided to go with Cork because it is completely biodegradable and it's also beautiful and waterproof, and it adds extra insulation and a little bit of softness. Now, how to find the cheapest Cork flooring is by not going to the Cork floor suppliers that sell like fancy clickable cork and everything like that that's already been pre-treated and ready to install. Instead, going to the hardware store and just buying cork squares and then putting them in manually and treating them is so much more affordable. But it was super fun to install and it was very long lasting. The only problem was that at this point we had sort of ran out of money, so we decided to move into the van before it was ready because it was sort of summer anyway, right? So we did live in here whilst the floor was drying, which was going to take 72 hours, and I also got my wisdom tooth out at the same time. So it was for sure stressful. But we survived. And we didn't have to pay any rent for that time. And everything that was left was basically the finishing touches. Our van actually used to be yellow on the inside, so the back doors were yellow, the side doors and the front doors were yellow. We were really lucky to work next to a guy who was restoring old motorbikes, so we did a work trade where I sewed cushions for his camper van and he helped us spray paint the door and also buff the outside so the old decals would go away. And then we spray painted the inner doors white instead of yellow, which ties it together a lot better. And I wish we could do more work trades because it makes so much sense financially and also in a community sense. It was so awesome to be able to work with different people and help them and learn from them. We couldn't have done it without them. We couldn't have paid for the spray painting. It would have been way too expensive. We couldn't have paid for all the wood or the tools, but luckily I could work for the company and they could give those to me. So if you have any skills, definitely consider trading them with other people for finishing projects like this because it makes it so much easier. Since we're all for simple solutions and budget-friendly opportunities, we decided to go with a solar shower bag instead of a built-in shower. A built-in shower that uses so much water and creates moisture just didn't seem to make sense in such a small space, especially not in a fairly mild country like New Zealand. So we got one of those shower bags for, I think they cost us $30, and it actually worked so well all throughout summer, and now in winter we've been super lucky house sitting. And for our toilet, we got a composting toilet, which has also worked great. In New Zealand, freedom camping is basically not an option anymore, so you basically always stay at campsites, which means we rarely, if ever, have to use the bathroom. We are super happy with how the van turned out, and we've been living in here now for almost a year, and it's been great. It is by far the best way to travel New Zealand, in my opinion. We've also been super comfortable in here, and it's been so great being able to own the place we live in and not pay any rent, because rent in New Zealand is very expensive. From start to finish, it took us 5 months to finish the van build, which was a little bit longer than I hoped, but we just couldn't work every day. It was mentally and physically exhausting, so sometimes we just needed to take a couple days break. Other than that, I really love everything about our van and it's been so comfortable. The only thing that was super hard about the build itself was just not having enough money in our bank account and being stressed about that at the same time as we were working on it. I think that definitely added extra mental stress and pressure, not being able to feel like I could take a day off, because that would mean one more day without working but not working on the van, if that makes sense. I also kept a spreadsheet because I love spreadsheets, and I think it's good to have a full idea and understanding about what you're paying for, because we tend to remember our financial past in a more rosy light than it is. But still, if I could do it again, the only regret I have is not making it sooner. So that was how we built our van. I hope you liked this video, and if you have any questions, just leave them in the comment box below, because I love talking about our little van, and yeah, it's been such an adventure living in here. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you next week with a new video. Bye. That means all the fabric is completely That means all the fabric is completely plastic. The simple dragkedja. Pants with a zipper. I can't believe I built this. Making this video, it doesn't feel real.